Hey, welcome back. This is Classic DM for another episode about playing First Edition, Fourth Edition, Fifth Edition, Third Edition, Pathfinder, anything you want to do, because it's a universal question I've been reading a lot lately in a lot of the Facebook groups, and it's been coming up a lot. So I thought, you know what, I should do a video about something like that, share my perspective on it, maybe to help some of those newer players, maybe some of the old school guys will get inspired and share their ideas as well. And the question really is this. You see these situations like, hey, I just want to start playing D&D with my friends. What's the best way to get started at being a DM? And you have all these answers. There'll be 365 answers. They're from all over the place. Someone will say, read the DM's guide. And one of them will say, buy a module and run it. And then you'll say, oh, start small and do this. And you know, some of the advice is pretty good. A lot of it's bad. So I want to see, you know what, if I was going to give you advice, you're hanging out with me at the house, and I'm like, dude, man, I want to run my own adventure. I got like one or two friends that want to play, or a guy will play with them, or someone's wife will play with them, or their kids can play with them. What's the best way to get started? Because some folks have gotten a bunch of the books for Christmas, and like, oh, my girlfriend bought me all the books. I have everything. This is awesome. Where do I start? It's kind of overwhelming. So this episode is going to kind of talk about that kind of stuff, and let's just get ourselves a cool backdrop going in the background here. So here we have this cool little underground wharf. We got these little battle maps from Pathfinder battle maps for a little boat here. We got our characters that we have in our G2 Classic DM episodes here. We got some giants and prison cells and holding cells and a bunch of orcs tied to a whipping post. And good lord, who knows where that goes, right? And you got Brynjar and Elephantisi hiding in shadows. I mean, it's a dramatic moment right out of an awesome adventure. That's your big dream, dude. So you say to yourself, I want to have a cool game session where all this neat stuff happens, and you know, lots of killing of monsters and getting experience. But gosh, I'm kind of intimidated about how to get started. How do I do that? Well, you could just do the simple thing that a lot of people say read the books. You could do that. So you know, you get your player's handbook out and you read through it. And the problem with doing that, to tell you the truth, especially if you start off with this, with the Pathfinder game, Pathfinder book, this one's really, really well done, and I recommend you read it if you can get a copy of it. You can get a mini version of it too that's about this size, I believe, if you want to, like $20. The reason why I would suggest this was by Jason Blumman is this really is just 3.5 edition, and most of the book has a lot of exposition writing in it that talks about the theme of playing and getting started, and actually has, like on page 3, an example of a play session. So that's and it's thick as devil. So if you want to weigh down, if you're gluing something together, you need a bunch of books to stack on top of it, I highly recommend this one. So the 5th edition books, let me just put this here so you can see it. So this is a really great book. I'm a huge Pathfinder fan. Not a lot of people are playing anymore because 5th edition is the hot to trot property. But if you get the new one and you start reading through this, it's not as deep. Right? It's cool, it's straightforward, and people are like, it's really streamlined, and it's really nicely done. I mean, all these books are fantastically written, beautiful layout, really good introduction to the game, and you'll find yourself reading through this, and about you get up to the 10th page, it's already saying pick a class, and pick a race, and pick this. They just jump right into making a character. And when you're asking the question like, oh, how do I run a campaign, it's not even talking to you. It's talking about how to roll characters. And this is important to do, but that's not your first step. Yeah, obviously you just need to take for granted that right off the bat, if you're going to play D&D or any kind of role-playing game, yes, there's going to be characters. So you don't need to worry about that. Whether you're going back and you're playing, let's move these jokers out of the way a little bit here. Whether you're going to play 4th edition, which is kind of MMO-ish, you open that book up, this is from I got this book in 2008, in July 2008. How to play, right? The very first section talks about how to play. What happens, the history of the game, how do you play? I mean, you can get these books pretty cheap now. You can get PDF versions on Drive-Thru-RPG or the Dungeon Masters Guild. You can get used versions for $10 off of Facebook. This is the 3.5 edition Player's Handbook. And most of them, this is the Monty Cook era. They talk about how to make a character. And almost every single role-playing game from the beginning of time spends the first 70 pages talking about building a character, making the character classes, choosing the races, because you can't do anything until you have a character. But it's not answering your core question. How do you get to this kind of cool stuff? How do you get to this? So what I actually recommend you not do, before I do that, let's do this. So see, you could obviously crack open the player handbooks and you could just read them, right? Read through how to roll characters, kind of gloss over the bard, gloss over the assassin, maybe skip the magic users. Don't read the details, all the different, ways to roll a cleric. Just like, okay, there's got a cleric, and here's what happened to your dwarf. There's a gray dwarf, whatever. Just kind of gloss through that, get to the classes, and he starts talking about skills. Like, yeah, there's a bunch of skills. You get that. They get to the part where we're talking about running the game and the combat. Really focus on that, because what you'll find is it's only like 7 pages. So in essence, to learn how to play D&D, most of these things, you're going to find that like, well, you really only need to read like 7 pages, and everything else is just ancillary information to give it more personality. So if you're looking at your 5th edition book, this is a module wrong book. Not a good one. So where we go? There's a page that talks about experience in the character advancement levels. What is that? Like page is even numbered, page 15. You can go do what I've done here, where hey, listen, 5th edition is armor class is done completely different than armor class in 1st edition. So if you're going to talk about it, you need to read shields are handled differently this than they were in 3.5. So take some post-it notes and make your own little markers. Say, hey, this is the section that talks about weapons. I want to know about weapon damage. I can just flip right to this. I want to know about modifiers, advantage and disadvantage. Just mark it out, lay it out, make your own mental table of contents where everything is. But you're reading all this stuff, and it's a bunch of rules. It's like picking up a war game. You're like, well, now I've got all these rules, and I know where they are, but I still don't know how to play yet. So what you could do, your friends are, oh man, you should play this thing. You should play Rise of the Rune Lords or Rise of Tiamat. These things are campaigns. I strongly advise you to stay the devil away from them initially. These things are huge. They are huge, masterfully put together, beautifully mapped campaigns that have your party traveling all over creation. It's like the Lord of the Rings films. There's like 17 DVDs in the director's cut, and they've done a pretty good job of making these 100-page hardbacks, and they're really beautiful and really nice. But you really only need something about this size. So I advise you, don't start here, okay? Only start here if you got a bunch of expert players with you that are really good at it. So what I recommend you do instead is to go to DM's Guild. Don't do some user community stuff either, because some of that stuff's a real hit and miss. Find some small module, something for maybe 1st edition for fun. Find a published novel that's not a hardback that costs you $50, and just read through, what is this? 12 pages. This is the Glacial Rift of Frost Giant Jarl. It's probably 200 hours of gameplay. Print up a copy of it, read through it like you're doing school notes, right? Studying for an exam in college. Read through it and start understanding, like, okay, as I read through these modules, I'm getting a sense of like how many enemies seems to be a good number of enemies, what kind of hit point numbers there are, where there are traps, where there are interesting things like the Ogre Magi trick box that happens in G2. You can see this in the Glacial Rift Frost Giant Jarl. There's a really cool trick box that the players, it's like a puzzle for the players to solve. You get the Remorhaz encounter in here, the Ring of Three Wishes. It talks about what happens if you cast a wall of fire on that. So you can start picking up details about, oh, this is cool. This old classic stuff, the maps, you could write on here, like where everything is. But this is really even too big too. And you can see I've marked it up here from where we did the map drawing episodes. Even this is too big. I know it sounds like a lot to bite off, but start small and just design one room encounter. And how do you do that? Well, you got to have some inspiration, right? So let's just pop open this. This will pop over our player panel here. We'll move this little web camera here smaller. And pause this player panel. So say you like saw this picture, right? Like, oh wow, this is so awesome. I've heard about the Vault of Drow, and you want to make this awesome, big, cool Drow city. That's still too big. You're thinking way too big. So think smaller. Oh, here's this cool mini I got, right? And it's this crazy arachnid type Drow caster guy, and he casts all these spider-based arachnid spells. Sounds awesome. Great. Now you got a villain. That's fantastic. So you got a villain. That's good. You need everything needs a villain. Don't make the villain the matron head of some drow house, right? That means there's going to be a supporting group of female clerics, and there's going to be male weapon masters, and all this stuff that you're going to see. And if you want to know more about that, sure, pick up these, the Vault of Drow and read R.A. Salvatore's book, but that's still too big. You need to be thinking about one room, okay? One room can be 2 hours of fun. So don't shoot that big, don't shoot that high. Try to draw inspiration about these things, favorite from a theme perspective. Like, here's a really cool Michael Crichton novel. It's called Pirate Latitudes. It was published years and years later. It's not like his Jurassic Park stuff and all that business. In fact, here's my old business card when I was lead designer on Warhammer 40K stuck inside. I tell you how long ago I bought that, like 2012. Really fun, easy, big, thick font book. Fun book to read, right? You can get this at any airport. You can probably get it for $1. Andromeda Strain, Next, State of Fear, Prey, Timeline, Jurassic Park. That's all of Michael Crichton's books. This one's a pirate book. So it's kind of set in like the 1500s. The reason why this is really cool is because, well, if you want to do a piratey themed book, read a read a pirate book, right? Read the first 5 chapters of a pirate book. And then say, well, I want it to be fantasy. I want it to have this D&D vibe. I got this cool map of some island I found somewhere. And maybe I was reading an old Conan the Barbarian series, had a bunch of picks. I want to put a bunch of picks on an island somewhere. You're still thinking too big. You're thinking a big island with a bunch of encounters on it, with a big area. You're thinking campaign size. You're still thinking way too big. Think smaller. Start thinking of things like, okay, here's my bad guys. They're going to look like these minis I picked up at the shop. That's cool. You're thinking $4.99 a pop for 2 minis. That's great. Now, say to yourself, well, let's start taking all those themes and blend them together. So you got pirates, you got the last boat at the end of the Vault of the Drow in Area 20, the Wharf Cavern. You're thinking, the R.A. Salvatore's Pirate King, or the graphic novel. It's a reworking of the Halfling Gem. Okay, so you want to do something piratey. That's even a word. Great. So, look at pictures of boats and say, yeah, I want this cool wharf, and I want to make a one-room encounter kind of like we have here on our board here. So you got this cool boat, which is just some battle map thing you can buy for like $15, whatever, and it has a bunch of little pieces. You put them together like printed cardstock. Make a little wharf. Got a little cool cave here, like from the Goonies or something. And then what do you have in here, right? You've got I put giants in here. Could have been anything. You've got. Let's just show you the room layout. So you got these prison cells. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very symmetrical, simple symmetrical designs using the 1-inch grid. Put some NPCs in the prison cells. Well, you need NPCs. They got a book for that, right? I highly recommend this Pathfinder content. I know a lot of you play in 5th edition. You don't have this level of content available for you in 5th edition. You can read this stuff and get the idea, like this guy here, Stigger Harrowstare, and there's even villains that have themes in some of these books too. And he's like, well, what would be 2 really good prisoners to have locked away in this place? Like, how about this guy here, this human ranger, the supreme hunter, or Nyala Stormstrike? So this will give you the great sense of like comic book hero style characters that will work as NPCs, right? So those can be the ones that are like, maybe they're trapped in your little jail and we don't know who's holding. So you got 4 really interesting NPCs. You create those out of nothing, right? Maybe you decided that you don't want to have, maybe you want to have villains, character villains. So maybe you got a particular miniature you want to use. So say it's an Obscura. She's a crazy, let's find a villain to fit her, a crazy magic user. So, okay, you look through here, arcane societies, carnival troops, corrupt guards, musketeers, death cult, demon knights, thieves, guild slayers, sinister cults. That sounds cool. She could be a member of a sinister cult. Let's see what page that's on. 210. Look, it's a table of contents. How convenient. Let's go to 210. There's 220. Sinister cults. Talks about sinister cults, some of the ideas you can do with them. It's like reading a book, right? Here's some not spells, but here's some archetypes of different types of leaders of these groups, what kind of magic items they might use. You've got some different type of characters that can be part of the cult, like enforcers or assassins. That's pretty interesting. Here we go. Here's a cult librarian. He sounds kind of cool. What else do we have in here? Oh, here's a baddie. Here's this demonic agent. Still sounds like a melee girl. An insane prophet. Well, he's crazy. Guy lives in a little cave for a long time. Well, what do we got? Here's one. So here's a Sinister Mastermind. Well, just turn into a female, right? And use the Obscura miniature you have. Read through this guy, what his spells, he knows what he's going to do, and say, there you go, there's my villain. Give him a cool name. Just don't call him like Ragnar or any crap like that. You look like a dummy. Create a villain. Villain's got to have cronies. Villain's got a bunch of bugbears. Maybe she's got a bunch of orcs that she's doing scientific experiments on. And your party has gotten a cool map, and you're on this boat, and you find this dock, and the party lands at the dock, and this crazy mastermind is in here, and she's doing terrible experiments and trying to glean information from these people here that she's got held prison, and there's some kind of complex that leads on to some other adventure that you're going to do another day, and you're not going to design anything more than just this. So you created a villain, you created some NPCs, or you just borrowed them from a film or for a comic book or whatever. You've got a cool cheapo map. You sketched out some rough chicken scratch battle map thing that you're going to play with your friends. And then the kids, as they come pulling up with their boat, everything's all dark. Maybe there's a big, massive door closed here. It's not one of those speak, friend, and enter things. And the characters can start, hiding shadows and try to figure out how to pick the lock or sneak in the door. And they kick in the front door, and boom, you got a melee combat situation going on. So boom, there you go. There's your first adventure. So what do you got to do beyond that? So that's just coming up with the ideas. So don't start big. Let's summarize. Let's just give you a quick summary on that real quick. Okay? The temptation with role-playing games is the books are so beautiful, you will collect them and never use half of them. And I know my wife can attest to that. Stay away from this. Okay? Stay away from these big things. In the beginning. Later on, you'll grow into this. It'll be fine. And you'll end up changing it so much you won't even want to use it. Don't be afraid to go back in time and get these $4 things. These things are brilliant. Good way for you to learn. So you start small. Just a room, just a villain, just some NPCs, just some basic baddies that you can have combat. The characters you're going to play with, they're going to bring their own friend. They're going to bring their party to the table here, right? So you got a theme. You started small. You've pooled all your inspirations, whether it was a film or a book or whatever you want it to be. Now you need to start thinking about what your players want to do, right? You could even do things like, hey, there's this one delve in Elder Scrolls Online. I really love it. It's totally cool looking. I'm going to take some screenshots of it and use it as visual aids in my game. Do it. Do that. Or you're playing Neverwinter, or you're playing Black Desert Online, or World of Warcraft, or whatever. Just lift stuff from all the media that you like to enjoy. Take screenshots without the UI showing, of course, and take the screenshots and print them up on cardstock and show them to your friends. Like, here's what you guys see in the Wrath of the Lich King. You see in the Iron Crown Citadel. That's what you see in the final room. I mean, your players will love that stuff. So put together your ideas with pictures, multimedia, books, references, and have your whole mind kind of think about your movie set. So you can have that cool dramatic scene that you ultimately wanted to have happen. Maybe what your dream is, your ultimate dream is to have the mad wizard, bad enemy with all the bugbears in the front, and you've got your fighter and the Mercedes in the front. Obscura is casting spells. She casts Charm Person on Mercedes, and one of the prisoners has gotten loose, and the Druid's in the back casting spells, and the cleric's almost trying to open this, and the big, massive, nasty battle happened. There's tons of dice on the table, and boom, at the end of the day, the wizard's dead, and these two NPCs get released, and this guy tries to backstab and kill everyone. They have to kill him too, and they find a map, and boom, before you know it, they're leading down this passageway and exploring some kind of hidden plot to steal some ancient book for Thulsa Doom. Boom, there you go. So once you have all that stuff worked out on a basic level, just do the first part. You can figure out the next part later. You can just say to yourself, you know what I'm going to do? When they get done killing everyone, I'm just going to have one of the NPCs has a story to tell, and that story to tell that you got to help me because blah, blah, blah has happened that way. Just whatever motivation you can come up with. Then, before you play again next weekend with your friends, make that up too. Just do it one piece at a time. Just kind of wing it. It's like, think of an episode on Netflix. You're watching any television show, you're watching the Vikings or whatever, you don't know what's going to happen next week. Neither do your players. But if you approach each episode as its own kind of freestanding adventure, you don't have to have this crazy rich tapestry of a novel like the Lord of the Rings thing all worked out in advance. Just take it episode by episode. And you'll notice this in filmmaking, especially on Netflix. The way they connect things together, it's kind of winged a little bit. It's not real super epic worked out way in advance. Now maybe they do, maybe their writer's room is that smart, but there's a lot of times I'm seeing episode 1, episode 2, and I go back and watch episode 1 again. I'm like, wait a minute, they're not even connected. They just randomly change the plot line and suddenly introduce a new female character out of nowhere just to make it work. So for a player, that's fun because it's never boring and stale. So one design, one room, one thing at a time. Don't try to do too much. So the next step you got to do, besides all the inspiration, you got your big dream. You need to do this. Who are your players? Like in real life. Like what do? They work a full-time job, they got kids, they dudes you go to school, dudes and girls you go to school with, whatever they are, what is it? How much time they got to play? When are they going to play? You don't play on Saturday from 2 to 4, can only play Wednesday nights. You know, they're going to be able to use D20 Fantasy Grounds. I mean, how's it going to play, right? How's it going to happen? So talk to them. Just talk to them and have a session where you all get together, say, hey man, I'm going to create this cool one-shot adventure for you guys, but I'll put a few plot points from there to tease you along to the next area, but only if you can conquer it. So you've already challenged them. What characters are you going to play? Let them go figure out their own characters. So let them figure out, like, let them go to the web and figure out what kind of cleric they're going to roll, right? Are there some Eldritch Knight spellcasting complication? You know, all this stuff. They're going to have fun figuring out that because in their mind they have a big power fantasy. They want to create some totally cool, kick-ass character, just like you're picking out, you know, villains from NPC Codex. They're creating their own amazing character here. Or maybe they got some, they want to make some kind of evil druid, even though druids are supposed to be neutral and things like that. So find out what their character fantasies are, what their character dreams are. Let them create whatever characters they want. I mean, I've seen some wild junk, dude. I've seen people wanting to play golems and stuff like that. Find out what they want to have. Say sure. I mean, don't say no to them. Let them do whatever they want. Keep their power curve. Keep their power curve together like this. It's like a football team. So keep that football team freshman level, senior level. Maybe there's one veteran player in there, but don't let the veteran player dominate everything. Let everyone pick their own cool power fantasy for their characters, right? And then know in your mind that you're going to have different levels of experience. So you may have this one friend named Frank or Sally or whatever who plays totally awesome, knows every rule, has played everything forever. use them as a resource to help navigate gameplay sessions that are weird and tricky, but don't let them run the game. Right? Just say, you know, I think that's a really cool idea, but I'm gonna allow my friend to play where we're at. If you want them to do that, then let them do it. If that person becomes too much of a lawyer with how you're running the campaign, or is trying to constantly correct you, you know, they're always going to combat you anyway. What you want to do is focus on everyone having fun doing their own thing, because the real spirit of playing this kind of a game is for you and your friends to have fun. There's no winner. Like, no one wins in the end. It's not like some PvP tournament. So as you get a sense of what those players want, you should kind of do the same kind of things that they're doing. So let's just take Phil Cherna, right? Let's pull over this player aid from the Glacial Rift of Frost Giant Jarl. So this is a character from BDO character of mine that was actually an archer. So you've got a person there like, hey, I'm making this druid, and she's going to have this cool scimitar, and the campaign you want to run, but let's make it like level 8. We've never played it. We're going to make a level 8 campaign. We not start at level 1 because we don't get killed in the first 5 minutes. Go through the player's handbook yourself and roll up a druid on your own. Just give her straight 14 stats across the board and say to yourself, okay, what's it going to actually really take for me to play? If I was to play a druid, what would I do? So go into the books, read what it takes to be a druid, pay close attention to these powers, right? Wild shape improvement and the Druid Circle, and this is the 5th edition here. Now, I'm a 1st edition guy by heart, but read through these things, the beast shapes and how often they can do it. You know, understand, if you were that other person, put yourself in the mind of that player and figure out what kind of powerful things they're going to do. Like, are they going to be a power player? Do they want to be a melee druid, for Lord's sake? Do they want to be a spellcaster? Do they really want to take advantage of shape-shifting? You know, it's things like bark skin and spider climb and call lightning and plant growth get them excited. Well, you're also going to need to take some time, and you need to go look in the spell books and get familiar with some of the spells they have at their disposal too, like Animal Friendship. It's a tricky spell. You're going to need to read that. So you need to research what your player's power fantasy is, because they're going to use it in gameplay, and they're going to try to pull something off, and you're going to need to be able to make a judgment call on it. So if you don't want to be opening up the book and looking up how Animal Friendship works when your druid player says, I want to try to convince the dolphins and the porpoises to help us, or I want to try to use speak with animals to convince the winter wolves to turn against their masters and kill them. Like, you need to have read those ahead of time. So think about what every single character is in your group that you're playing with, what their fantasies are, what their spells are. And one thing that'll be tricky is they might then turn around and ask you, well, what's the theme of our adventure? What kind of things do we need to know? If they pick a bunch of jack of all trades spells and abilities and skills, you know, it's okay for you to tip them off. Listen, this is a cool adventure. It's going to have kind of a pirate theme. You guys are going to come to some underground cave and find some prison, and there'll be a whole dungeon complex and probably a bunch of cultists and maybe a big wizard at the end. That's just enough information for them to understand that they're not going to need to have call lightning, because they're going to be in ground all the time, okay? So let those players know kind of what they're going to be up against. What kind of movie is it? Superhero movie, World War II movie, Kung Fu hero, John Woo movie, you know, pistol slinging Denzel Washington movie. Let them know ahead of time what kind of a game they're getting themselves into. You know, things like Charm Person might come in handy when you have NPCs. These could be combative NPCs in this encounter as well. So tip them off so they can prepare appropriately for the film. Really, that's what it is. It's almost like a film that they're going to get involved in. Okay? So let's go to our list here. What else do you need to do? Don't be afraid to reference other editions of other game systems, like Pathfinder's Game Master book, or the 4th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, or the Dungeon Master Guide Officer 5th edition. Yes, you're a Dungeon Master. You need to read through these things, but when you get to the section about Ultravision versus Infravision and traveling overseas and traveling on foot, you can just kind of briefly read it, because you're not going to be doing constantly having to do rolls and checks like that. The other thing you're going to do is, when you populate your adventures with enemies that you can handle, adjudicating, if that's even the proper word. So don't try to put too many different varied enemies in your campaign. Like, for example, we had this board first set up. What do we have? Bugbears and 2 giants. When giants are really just like villains. These 2s were just villains. Now, if we went down the route earlier where we had Obscura using this mini to be a mad cultist mage, and she's got a bunch of bugbears, all we need to have is a bunch of bugbears, and we can create her, make her an interesting character. So all we need to do is be familiar with the bugbears in here for this adventure. And you can read through the other versions, which you can get really cheap now. People are dumping these on Facebook like crazy. 4th editions are good reference, and even 3.5. Don't be afraid to grab these books. It's fun to get them, because basically what's happening is you're getting the same take on the same enemy developed year after year after year, decades after decades, and every single time someone adds a little bit more spice and variety to them. So become really familiar with your adversaries, become really familiar with what your players can and want to try to do. Don't be stuck with just 5th edition. All the other resources, sure, the math numbers are different, but you could still use them to help make your adventure more existing. So what's your role as a dungeon master? So you've got everything set up, you've been as creative as you possibly can, you got an adventure set up. What's your role? You're really just there to be a film director, but you act more like a judge. Have you ever seen courtroom dramas where the judge is just kind of sitting there with his finger up against the side of his head and he's not really saying anything? Like, he's not the attorney. He's not the person that's being accused. He's just kind of listening. And every now and then he'll make a ruling on something. So when you're the DM, you have to do that, but at the same time, you're almost like someone, reading a novel to someone out loud. You're telling them what they see, you're drawing the pictures, the players are asking permission. I'm going to try to hide in shadows and see if I can slip with the room undetected. You need to know things like, well, okay, we've got a burning torch thing happening here, and we got a burning torch thing happening here, and this is a burning torch thing happening here, and a burning torch. So this means this is casting light this way, this is casting light this way. As soon as you step in this chamber, you're going to be completely illuminated, and I'm not going to let you be hidden in shadows anymore. Now, if someone who knows how to hide in shadows, when they walk in this room, they would see how bright the light is here. They'd be like, wow, if I step into this zone, I'm going to be absolutely the most illuminated person on the planet, like being in the middle of a football field. They may not want to do that. It's your job as a dungeon master to kind of be the film director, and you also need to be good at kind of letting them know what the situation is. Think about what it's like for them to play this situation. Don't just say, yeah, sure, hide in shadows, you can just walk around wherever you want. Like, kind of let the environment control what's going on. Try to make sure that the situation at hand that the players encounter is described in a way that's interesting for them to figure out, that prompts them to do something. Like, for example, we got 3 orcs here tied to these like whipping posts, right? Posts with a bunch of manacles on 4 sides. They don't have any armor on. They don't have any weapons. The bugbears are laughing and whipping them and beating them and teasing them and stuff because the boss is away, right? The giant guy is just laughing. He's going to go up here and watch people loading stuff onto a boat that's going to come back. The prisoners are rattling against the cages, and so when your monk and your assassin comes slipping into the room, maybe the torches aren't bright enough, they see the bugbears are occupied, so they could probably slip behind all this, and maybe this one bugbear's here, so they're less likely to slip around this, right? So you need to kind of think of that in real life. If you had to sneak past these orcs, and these bugbears are whipping these guys, they probably see you, especially with the big light source happening right here. Always think about the light sources. So in a way, if you describe the situation interestingly, they'll probably come with normal human tactics to deal with the situation. Like, their tactics might be, we're going to try to sneak up on this guy and backstab him and kill him real quietly. Now, the moment they kill this guy here might see him out of the corner of their eye, and then you got a huge melee and a fight happening. That's fine. Then the rest of the party can come kicking in the front door, and we got a fighting action going on. So be sure, as a dungeon master, you're playing the judge, but you're also like the production designer in a film. You're creating the location for them. It's kind of like being a level designer in the game industry. So you don't need to be this brilliant writer in the world. You don't need to have a magnificent vocabulary. You're not some kind of British storyteller from a children's program. All you need to be able to do is just kind of describe them what they're seeing, what's going on. It gives them a sense of what the situation at hand is, and it may prompt them to do tactical moves or ideas on their own. For example, you might want to have a situation where there's no bugbear guards. They're in this room here, and the doors are closed, and there's just these orc slaves tied to these whipping posts, 2 here and 2 here, and prisoners are all sleeping. So when they first come in the room, maybe these torches aren't even illuminated. The situation at hand can be extremely different. Or it could be a situation where this fire giant is beating these guys themselves because he thinks it's funny, and he doesn't have any guards with him, and everyone is awake in the room, and they're yelling at the fire giant because he's making a bunch of noise. Or the orcs are tied up over here, and this rogue is being abused by this fire giant, and he's hitting her over the head or something like that, and the bugbear is helping hold her or whatever. I mean, when you come in the room, he's all occupied doing that. Your thief types and can sneak around the shadows, maybe get a backstab off of this guy. Or the illusionist could cast a spell from here and cast color spray, which he gets in range to color spray him. Or maybe the warrior and the fighter and the fighter magic user want to run the room and start doing something and get this guy to turn around so these guys can slip from behind. So you just want to create the stage set for the players to do what they want to do and let it unfold as it may. You don't need to worry about whether it unfolds the way you thought it was going to unfold. Don't lock yourself in that mistake. That's something I see happen a lot. Players are ruining my campaign. They're killing my storyline. I see this all the time. It isn't your storyline. You're just creating a sandbox, massively multiplayer kind of a game world. They're having fun doing what they want to do. You just make sure no one does anything that's illegal, wrong, or silly, and you need to equip them with enough information to have fun. You should enjoy watching them solve this. It's like you get to watch a film. So you're getting to watch this whole drama unfold, and you just help to facilitate the next scene. Hey, what happens next? They're going to come into all kinds of trouble. People are going to fail saving throws. Dudes are going to get damaged real bad. Someone's going to get knocked unconscious. You're going to control enemies and kind of be dastardly at the same time. So be the DM, be the judge, be the filmmaker. Empower the players to run the show. Don't worry about things aren't coming out the way you wanted it to be. Okay? So now when it gets down to the dirty nitty gritty of getting ready for the adventure, you may notice that I use a lot of these little post-it notes, right? They come in handy. What do I do with them? Well, I do 3 things with them: enemies, players, and initiative. So before the players even got here, right? Before they even got here, the day before we play, I've already made kind of a master list. In fact, we'll just turn this way towards the little camera. I've already made a little master list that says how many hill giants, how many local frost giants, how many visitors. This is from another room, another adventure. And during the play session, I'll create these little sheets that look like this. It says the name of the monster, has their hit dice. I use it to hit AC 0 in first edition. You're going to need to know what their proficiency bonuses are, what their armor class is, how much damage they do if they hit, and then I have a series of hit points. And these guys are all 80, 80, 80, 80. So you can see during one battle here, I was scratching off how much damage one of these guys took. So one sheet per enemy type comes in handy because you could have 10 to 12. So let's just take a look at this room here, right? So say the orcs were just baddies running around, and there was 2 bugbear guards at the door here, and that's all. And there was one fire giant, and that's it. There's no other enemies. So I would probably have, I'd have one sheet for the orcs. I might have. Here's a. Frost Giant Lord, right? Let's replace him with somebody else. Reach over here and put him here. So say I had this big Frost Giant Lord. He was running the show. So I got his stat sheet here. We'll put this in front of the camera so you can see a little bit better. So I got all his health and all his numbers and everything kind of worked out ahead of time. Move him out of the way a little bit. So when it gets ready to have the big battle, I'm not flipping in a book. I just got this tiny little stack of little post-it notes. And what these are, you can get these things, are super cheap. You get this at Staples, right? There's these little post-it note pads that have sticky business, right, on the back like this. So this little part up here is all sticky. So you can stick it to stuff like this. So that helps you just kind of put it down somewhere, and then you can write on it without it being moved and bumped around. So you can put it near miniatures or write things down. It's not going to like slide across the table like this and knock things out of the way, which you don't want to have happen. So do that for the enemies. Do that for your players, because you're going to need to keep track of their health for them. It's good for you to ask them what their health is, but at the same time, you're controlling the enemies, and the enemies are going to act differently based on what kind of health your party has. Let's see if we can find an example of that. I got tons of these are left over for some of our episodes that we did before. Ogre Magi's, Hill Giants, Stone Giant Elder. Well, let's just make one up. I can't put my hands on one quickly here. Okay, that's our notes for the show. Let's just make one up. Okay, let's say our party has. We'll just start at the top here. Let's say that everyone we have a character name. Let's get rid of that pen. That one sucks. So we have Mercedes. You need one of these for yourself. Mercedes, Zolaris, and Failcherna. Let's just use those. And I may want to know what their armor class is. So I'm going to call them with their armor class. Or Mercedes, what is she? -2. And what do I got for Zolaris? He's like -1. Just jot that down. And Failcherna, who's the Druid. Maybe I just have 3 friends playing today, and she's AC 0. And what's her hit points? So Failcherna is at 80 hit points. And Zolaris, because this is one thing that's going to determine whether they live or die, right? Can you hit them, and are they damaged? His hit points is 156. Remember, I use a max hit point system in the first edition. You may or may not agree with that, but you can check. I have a whole video that talks about that. I like to have the most epic level fun possible. The monsters are also the same thing. So you have that there. So during the battle, you can say, oh, Mercedes takes 17 points of damage. You can do 17, take a little calculator, subtract that off, figure out, oh, she has 122 health left. So you can keep track of that stuff openly, where everyone can see it. During the battle, it helps you also determine like what's happening. So say in this big battle here, let's say our big frost giant dude is, say there's no orcs. They've all been killed. They're all dead. And we've got Zolaris, and we said what else we had? Failcherna, not Vrenjar, and we had Mercedes. Mercedes and Zolaris are fighting the big Frost Giant Lord guy, and the Druid is trying to play healer, and she's casting Tangle near him. Maybe she decides to start casting some spell, but the Frost Giant has damaged this guy heavily, and say Zalaris is down to 43 health. It helps you as a DM determine, like, well, this guy's, he's not going to stop what he's doing and try to push between these two characters and go for her because she's casting. He probably feels confident if he's not damaged very much just to stay on this fighter, maybe finish him in another round. So having this data helps you pretend that you're the AI programmer and you're designing the AI, and you can make the decisions for the monsters that seem to make sense. For example, if the fight was just starting out, and maybe Obscura was part of the party, and she pops her head in the doorway, and he sees that, he might know that she's winding up some kind of spell. He might just push his way between both of them and try to go interrupt her spell casting. And for a player, it's like, whoa, crap. And you may have a situation where she gets the spell off right when she casts it. Maybe you make her make a dexterity check. If he tries to hit her, he hits her. Maybe she gets a chance to make a dexterity check, and she has to roll 16 or less to determine whether she finishes casting the spell. You may want to pay attention to, like, well, it's only a somatic component, or it's only a verbal component. It has no hand incantation, so she could just yell out stop or fear or whatever. So all those things help you during the combat figure out what's going on and who's going to do what, because you're running the AI for the monsters. Okay, so, and what else do we have on our list? We're almost done here. So enemies, players, and initiative. Oh yes, I almost forgot about that. It's always good to have one of these little sheets to figure out what the initiative roll is. So when everyone's got these different initiative rolls, and I did a video about this as well, let's say we had a situation where we have, let's see, all these guys are still alive. Bugbear, Orc, Bugbear. So what I would do is I do initiative by a monster group close to each other and individual players in melee range close to each other. So this would be group 1, and this is group 2, right? And if someone in the back, they're their own dexterity modifier roll. So I might roll 3d6 for the monsters, and you see me do that a lot in the show. So say, okay, the monsters get 3d6. So we have a 1, and a 1 is 2, and a 3 is a 5. And this player group gets their initiative roll, where they got 3, and a 2, a 5, and a 6, 11. So what I would want to say is group 1 has an 11, group 2 has a 5, and let's see what Obscura's roll in the back would be, and I might give her a dexterity modifier, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13. So actually number is 0 and 1 is 13. So this is the mage in the back, and then this is the fighters, the frontline melee train, and then I got the monsters in the back. So, and then I can just keep circling this. She goes first, these go second, you go third. She goes first, you go second, you go third. So she might want to cast a few spells. These guys might get damaged. They might start wiping off and killing off some of these bugbears and moving positions. He might be changing positions to here. And if the grouping changes, like the cleric runs on the scene and joins in the melee, he's going to join into the initiative group. You might want to roll initiative again when the next round happens. So you need something to keep track of who gets to go in what order, because it's very, very easy, and you've seen me probably do it on the shows myself. I lost track of whose turn it was. And there's nothing wrong with that. As soon as you lose track of whose turn it is, go back and re-roll initiative again. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, no one's going to probably die. No one's going to say, it's not fair, I played all day long and you lost track of the initiative and my dude got hurt. So what? You can heal up out between the encounters. So keep track of the player health, the player AC numbers that you need to handle combat. Keep track of the monster health. That'll help you drive the AI, what happens with the enemies. Keep track of initiatives so you know whose order is what. Get a good handle of who's rolling to hit, who's casting spells. If you have to have any special rulings, you can ask your friends, you can make it up on the spot, you can read all the different books. So all those things together should give you what you need kind of to get your first little game session going. Start small, one room, cater it to your players, get your little homework done first, read and absorb as many of the essay type content that you find in all these different books like this about how to run the game, and go for it. And when you get done playing the game, be cool about it and say, okay, cool, this is awesome. Let me give you guys all your experience. I'll email you your experience numbers tomorrow. What did you like and what did you not like about the session? This is something that happens in a workplace a lot, but doesn't happen at D&D tables. So when the adventure's over, it's time to go home. It's, oh, dude, my mom's here to pick me up, or I got to go, and someone's going to work, or someone's taking off. Say to yourself, well, did you like what we had today? What seemed weird? And someone might say, I don't know, I thought that when I was trying to cast spells, the way you had my character get the spell interrupted didn't seem right. I thought it was going to work this way. Learn from that. You know what? Let me go read up on that and see if I've done it right, because I could have done it wrong. So the more humble you are about being a DM, about recognizing and stating clearly, I'm not really sure how to handle that. I thought maybe I'd just make you roll against your dexterity, roll your dexterity or higher. Well, maybe it's the other way around. Making a dex check is usually the dexterity or lower, which is something that happens a lot in Traveler. So, don't be afraid at the end of the play session to ask the players like, hey, how did you like it? And they might say, I don't know, the combat was really complicated and I wasn't really sure what was going on. I didn't really know what to do. And then it's like, well, that's cool. Maybe what do you think would be more fun? Maybe less enemies, more stealth, more storyline, more puzzles, more traps. What kind of things do you guys like? And you can always change the next adventure to have more of that. You might have a situation where like a player is just a power gamer, just likes to walk through everything, just obliterating every monster on screen. Well, then start boosting up their damage type, start targeting that player more, because there's always going to be certain classes, like fighters, are really strong, great armor class, high health, tons of damage output. Start tailoring things where, you know, even in our Glacial the Frost Giant Jarl, what do we got here? You know, we had local Frost Giants that are just a bunch of scrubs, and then we had a Frost Giant Lord. In a big nasty fight situation, the Frost Giant Lord's overconfident and arrogant. He's going to go for the melee train. He's not going to run in the back and try to go after the monk. He doesn't care about that kind of stuff. Put 3 of these guys in a monk, keep her challenge in the back, so you can take care of 4 of them while your melee train heavy hitters with heavy armor and good magic items are taking care of the big lord. Everyone's equally challenged simultaneously. The other thing, last thing I would say before I stop here, is pay attention to how well the players talk to each other when they're playing and how coordinated they are, and see if you can pick up on who tends to be the natural leader of the group. A lot of times when you have a group and you're playing, people that haven't played much may be more quiet because they're not sure what to say and not sure what to do. Turn to them and say, hey, what do you want to try to do? You have any ideas what you'd like to try to do? And they may be like, I'm not really sure. I guess, what could I do to help the party? And they may just turn to the rest of the players at the table, and the players might be kind of rude to them, might say, oh, why don't you try casting some spells and help and do something? Like, don't let that negative train happen. Give them a suggestion yourself. You're the DM. You could say things like, well, you know what? You're an illusionist. You have a lot of really cool illusions you could do. You could create some kind of fictitious, you know, illusionary force, phantasmal force in the middle of the room and scare the devil out of all the creatures, and all your melee guys could one-shot them. And like, oh, that's neat. How could I do that? And you may want to crack open the spell book real quick and spend 2 minutes going through the spell and talking about it back and forth and inspire them from that point forward for the rest of their life when they're playing illusions. They'll remember the time you took to do that with them. The other group members in the party might think, hey, that's cool, I'm playing illusions too. And then they'll grow from that instead of being like letting the social dynamic of the other players who are more experienced bully or make the player that's new feel like they're kind of a third wheel and not helping much. So encourage all those players to kind of get involved and keep it fair. Because if everyone's not given an opportunity to have fun and do neat things, they're not going to play. It's just like with a computer game. If it's not cool, if you go into a battleground and you're getting destroyed, you're probably not going to keep playing the battleground for the next 6 months. So D&D is a game that's very adaptable to that kind of a social dynamic, and your job as a DM is to kind of make sure that everyone's having a good time. Imagine having a big cool party at your house. You want people to have fun. You don't just like watch TV while everyone's running around drinking your beer and eating all your Cheetos or whatever it is you do. I don't know. So remember, you're DM, you're kind of this cool ambassador. You're like the leader of the group. You're the football coach of the battlefield. You're the wargaming general. You're the guy that should know about the rules. You're the creative entity. You're the person that reads novels. You're the person that is friendly and empathetic to your friends' dreams and desires for their characters. They should ultimately love your adventures because how much power and energy you put into them to make it fun for them. And at the end of the day, that's all it's about. All right, cool. Hope you liked the video. We'll talk to you again soon. If you ever have any questions or requests, just drop me a line. I'll let you know. What I've been trying to do lately, as opposed to just dragging you guys through the Glacial Rift or Frost Giant Jarl, much because I have a huge battle it's going to take forever to complete, is I'm trying to pick up on a lot of common questions people are asking some of the Facebook groups and making videos that kind of give you my take on it. I'm not the designer of the original game, so if you've got a request, pop it over to me and we'll see if we can accommodate you. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.